Welcome, people from the south. Welcome, people from the east. Welcome, people from the north. And welcome, all of you from the west. Dear rats, oxen, and tigers. Dear rabbits, dragons, and snakes. Dear horses, goats, and monkeys. Dear roosters, ducks, and pigs. Let me roll out the red carpet for the guests of all ages, of all colors, of any faith and religions, and of all sexual orientations. Aliens, extraterrestrials, strangers, and earthlings, please come in and join us. I am delighted to see the fellows from above, and from below, and from beyond, and those from within. People from the sea, people from the mountains, people from the desert, people from the forests, and people living next door. Thank you all for coming. Dear colleagues, dear friends, dear everybody, I cordially welcome you all to my lecture O on O. And in the form of this small brooch, a tiny fragment from one of those large steel sheets called checker plate that are used for flooring in architecture, in machine halls, or the engine rooms of big ships, this iron eye, as it were, I would like to thank Angelika Nollert and Petra Hölscher of die Neue Sammlung of the Pinakothek der Moderne and the Engelhorn Stiftung for inviting me to share with you some of my pondering, my thoughts, my considerations, my despairing, my doubts, my convictions, and my making. So what you will now see and get is not an overview, but rather a puzzle made up of any number of fragments. Eyes and faces and skulls are some of the earliest and most archaic themes and symbols in the history of jewelry. Just think of amulets and masks. You never know whether they will help you or not. But it is somehow nice to know that a second face or a third eye has got your back. For my warm welcome, I have therefore chosen 36 brooches and one pendant that saw the light of day in my studio in the course of the last 9 years. They are members of families that I have named Eyes, Quidam, Tête-à-Tête, the Professionals, die Diversen, Badges, die Knochigen, Dusterlinge, Upper, Somebodies, Lost and Found Faces, and one of my favorite titles ever, I Made It, You Name It. For me, titles and names are never only designations, but instead an enhancing extension that creates an additional poetic dimension. Titles point to real roots, to hidden parallels, and to fictitious networks. They can also send you down the wrong path and veil reality. Great that you are here too. Part 2, from the string to the whole and back again. To understand and appreciate the importance of the whole in jewelry, you must always remember its counterpart, the string. As with most things, the prototypes, the archetypes, and the sources, the strings and chords have their roots in nature. The same is true of their fat brother, the rope, and of their slender sister, the thread. And without any doubt, the whole existed anyway for billions of years before we humans arrived on the stage and named it. This X-ray portrait of Meret Oppenheim, a protagonist of surrealism and one of my favorite artists, tells us just how much jewelry was part of her work and life. She was born in Berlin in 1913 and passed away in 1985 in Basel in Switzerland. I admire Meret Oppenheim for her great paintings, objects and poems, but also and especially for her ideas for fantastic and poetic jewelry and accessories, in this case for a belt. The gentle and soft hands are enlaced by a cord, which evokes an ambivalent and uncanny feeling. Thus, the subtle yet powerful detail reveal a hidden obsession, a desire, or is it a sign of something tying the wearer down, a fear? A draft for a necklace from around 1935. Imagine having bones tied around your neck. A fence, a constraining corset, a tight-fitting bandage, a morbid scarf. The surreal, the unconscious visions, dreams, nightmares, a memento mori. From the groove to the hole, 10 very small, beautiful pendants made of animal teeth, shells, and ivory. Found in a cave in France, they were unearthed alongside delicate bone tools and were found in the same layers as Neanderthal fossils, our ancient cousins until about 40,000 years ago. I show you this image because it demonstrates very nicely a major technical change. A transition from tying elements on strings to a new method involving drilling a fine hole in an object and then threading it on a string. Before they were able to drill tiny holes, our ancestors, as you can see, made fine grooves to prevent the threads from slipping off the teeth, claws, bones, and shells. I love strings. I have collected them all around the world. But I also love holes. Dear guests, colleagues, and friends, allow me to welcome you to the realm of the holes. There are absolutely countless examples and models in nature of the whole. Here you can see a short segment of a cuttlefish used as a fingering by my grandson Lionel. In a second or two, he will open his mouth and pop the delicacy into the largest of the 9 holes in his body. From there, the cuttlefish will start a long journey through his underworld, winding its way along tubes, holes, and caves that are omnipresent en route to the final gate, the exit. My jewels are like my own flesh. That's what old Mexican widow Theodula said to her son, Ixra, when recalling the time when she received her first jewelry from her husband, Celedonio, aged only 14. I shall never take them off, Celedonio. And when I'm with you, they are all that I shall not take off. My jewels are like my own flesh. From Carlos Fuentes' marvelous novel, Where the Air is Clear. 5 hunters proudly present their trophy, their prey. They have, with good reason, hung the meat of a water buffalo around their necks. That way, it is easier to carry it over long distances, and it allows them to keep their hands free to go on collecting food or hunting or defending themselves, if necessary. Photographed by Penny Tweedy, taken in Arnhem Land in the Northern Territory of Australia in 1995. We are born through holes. And when we die, in many cases, we get put back in holes. When talking about the significance of the hole, it is crucial to start with the ring entitled Le Trou, or The Hole, made by Man Ray in 1970. To call a simple wedding band a ring with a hole would be a tautology, like a small dwarf or sweet sugar. Because by its very nature, every ring already has a hole. To drill a second, smaller hole into an egg-shaped object above the hole for the finger is very simple, but simply very ingenious. The original ring is made of fine gold. The smaller hole is shaped in the form of a double cone and is made of platinum. The extra hole creates a lot of attention and curiosity. It tempts, indeed compels you, to peek through it. It is quite literally eye-catching. It is said that Man Ray expected that people who had looked through this hole might afterwards see the world in a new and different light. A hole, a passage to another world, a time machine, a gate to escape, last exit. Let me share something I sometimes wonder. Was Man Ray inspired for this ring by the French movie Le Trou, The Hole? The script is based on a true story and was written by José Giovanni, a prisoner in La Santé jail in Paris in 1947. Together with 4 fellow jailbirds, he had made a meticulous plan to break out. Night after night and week after week, they dug a hole in the floor of their prison cell and then a 100-meter-long tunnel from the basement to one of the large sewage pipes. Le Trou, the hole, the escape, an obsession, a fever. The dream of freedom got whistle-blown and therefore holed out. The movie is a claustrophobic, intimate portrayal produced in 1960. It initially flopped, But 10 years later, and exactly at the time when Man Ray made his ring entitled Le Trou, the eponymous movie was celebrated as a masterpiece of film noir. In the vast majority of all the pieces of jewelry I have ever made, holes play more or less important roles in the one or the other way. Loch, 1996, a brooch diameter 25 millimeter. The circle with a dot in its center is the astronomical symbol for the sun, and the symbol alchemists use for gold. Red hole, brooch silver painted, a hole like a wound. However, a real hole, is always absolutely colorless, because where there is nothing, there can also be no color. German actress Andrea Sawatzki photographed with a picture frame around her neck, one of a series of 6 portraits I made in 1984. An ordinary, mass-produced picture postcard of your own choice. By stamping out 3 holes, it becomes a mask you can attach to your face. Simply put your nose through the hole in the center. The who knows masks turn you into anything or anybody you find on picture postcards. Hide and seek. Masks and jewelry share an awful lot in common. A sense of belonging and outlook, clarity of defending, veiling, concealing, misleading, changing roles. The endless variations were documented on the occasion of many nosy performances all over the world. Fukidashi is Japanese, and a common term for speech bubbles among the manga aficionados. The fukidashi are therefore usually not empty, but contain a written message or the notation of thoughts or sounds. In each of these large rectangular iron pendants, you can easily discern 3 holes. The dominant figurative openings in each center are reminiscent of expressive speech bubbles in manga or cartoons. They may be empty here, with no words, letters, explanations, question marks, or other signs and symbols to be seen, but each tells its own story. The small round hole with the golden eye on the top of each piece enables it to be connected to a cord or chain. So the fukidashi can be worn as pendant as a large breastplate on the chest. The faceless heavy gold ring from 1993 means you can slip the heraldic animal of anonymous mass entertainment onto your finger. Give it flesh and blood content and replace the empty facial expression of the cartoon character with living gestures. Let me close this chapter with a pearl of wisdom by the filmmaker David Lynch. Keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. In the jungle, Tarzan shouts, mouth wide open, enough holes, please, no more holes. Enjoy his beautiful voice. One more time. despite great successes in exhibitions, in my 4th year studying under Hermann Jünger at Munich's Academy of Fine Arts, I was forced to accept that I had not set my designs clearly off from the prevailing trends. The preferred strategy for images at the time relied on graphic or relief-like miniatures. And this approach was also to be sensed in my pieces. I was banging my head against a wall. Shock, stop, regroup. Draw, read, listen to music, ponder things. I decided to turn my back on miniatures and confront the human body directly with interventions and measures, and thus create direct physical symbols. Equipped with all manner of materials, I spent countless hours in the photo booth at Munich Central Station. The photo sequences led to a new approach. Now my focus was no longer on the well-shaped independent object, but on direct interaction with the person. First and foremost on the individual, and then as regards relationships, communication and networking on the social, cultural, economic and political context. The initial outcome was pared back brooches crafted from gold as symbols attached straight to the body. In 1980, I liberated myself from them too, in favor of economic accessibility for all. And with plaste and elaste, went for pin-on jewelry made by using cheap household rubber, industrial string springs, and long rubber threads. I first presented plaste and elaste in Galerie Ra in Amsterdam, fit for purpose in little plastic bags so you could help yourself at a very modest price. This kind of a reset, a case of me imagining the opposite, and I don't mean the exact opposite, but a renewed, recurrent basic questioning of things, has been a key characteristic of my approach ever since. Thus, almost coincidentally, I suddenly found I could address the entire body. Study for a piece for the head from 1979. And armpit bowl, gold diameter, 2.8 centimeter. If you wear this golden bowl, also known as Dio, in your armpit, and that is what it is designed and made for, you may at first freeze for fear of losing it. That hurts. Over time, you get used to it. The bowl feels at home there, and as the X-ray shows, becomes a kind of a second bowl and socket. The two-person ring made of stainless steel in 1980 was originally subtitled, highly laconically, as "In love, engaged, married." The fact is, if you connect two rings with a firm rod, you get a double ring or a device that leaves neither person any wiggle room when they wear it. As long as you harmonize, the ring is actually quite great to wear. If not, then the trouble starts. Mutually attached, I made the brooch for two persons the same year. You can also wear the device on your own, and thus communicate that there is still a free port, meaning that you don't necessarily want to wear it on your own forever. Here I'm wearing it with my wife, Therese Hilbert. We have been married for over 50 years, and since 1975, we have shared a studio and workshop. But we rarely exhibit together, as in our opinion, being a couple does not suffice as an exhibition concept. Allow me a brief intermezzo and fast forwarding some 40 years. It is by no means a given that we both have been honored with a solo show in the Neue Sammlung in Munich's Pinakothek der Moderne. However, for us, professional and social equality forms a fundamental basis for our relationship. In her Red exhibition, Therese succeeded in forging a unity out of what is not a simple architecture, the existing fit-out, and the essence, the subject of her work. She created a rhythmic and syncopated structuring of the display cases and the precise and highly varied presentation of the objects in them, framed by the simple and yet stunning red circle or ring, and accented by the expressive logo designed by Friedrich Linke. I could go on forever. An image you don't readily forget. In this lecture, there is no more beautiful and better moment to express my appreciation, and thanks to Therese. Color, ornaments, images are three elementary original themes of jewelry. For some time, I had rejected these aspects, possibly out of personal aversion. In 1981, I decided to endure all that and made them the central theme of a theology of conversion. The color, a wooden case painted white. Inside there are 1,138 different brooches in 569 different colors, meaning the entire range of Pantone print colors. You need to take the time to find your favorite color. Wallpaper is the best suited when it comes to wearing an ornament. It is the proverbial expression of fear of absence, the horror vacui. Used as a rule to cover interior spaces, here it is used the other way around. It covers firm volumes. From 1982 to 85, I made 400 wallpaper brooches this way. In order to show its effect on the body, I invited friends to choose some of these objects and pin them wherever they liked. The image, all manner of images, the most beautiful today, are most widespread on postcards. To turn them into wearable brooches, I used a thin acrylic panel, rubber rings, and a ready-made brass clip to produce a removable picture frame. In a matter of seconds, you can easily change the postcard and thus decide what picture you take with you. Pulled away with a tiger. What a tragedy that, like so many precious species, the postcard is now slowly also becoming extinct. In jewelry, you find mirrors, in particular in the context of amulets and talismans. However, here I want to talk about two very idiosyncratic approaches to the topic. I dreamt I was lying on my back, floating like a cork in a swimming pool filled with mercury. And owing to the liquid's high density, I could hardly sink. This led to the idea of fundamentally and extensively toying with this fantastic but risky material. In 1982, I thus made the photopiece hand mirror. The experience of holding this heavy, almost intangible, sloshing element in its liquid state in your hand, whereby holding is defining not the right verb, is truly incredible. People ask me, how did you manage? It was like this, and photographed from above. So like this, it just runs away. But anyway, don't try. Catoptric ring, 1988, gold mirror. On the base of the metal frame of the ring, your own lashless iris floats, grabs your curiosity as you gaze at it. This piece allows you to revisit yourself, encounter an isolated part of your own body, a means of confrontation. Gaze at the echo of yourself. Here. Twice a day, the women of the Ovahimba in the Kunwene region of Namibia cover themselves from head to foot in an oily emulsion of butterfat, red ochre, and the aromatic resin of the Omusumba bush. And that includes their hair, their leather loincloth, and their jewelry. The skin gleams and becomes interesting. There was a time when in many places in Australia, gold nuggets simply lay on the ground. The way today, meteorites and tektites underfoot attest to impacts an infinitely long time ago. Why were the Aboriginals never interested in these gleaming yellow metal blobs? The answer is astonishing. You can't even eat them. (1980). It was time for gold to return to the darkness whence it came. I banished it for a while. For how long was not my concern. Many of you have known this bangle for ages. No need to repeat the old stories and no news. When the US Army liberated the Nazis' Buchenwald death camp, they found thousands of golden wedding bands stolen from the innumerable persons they had murdered, who were mainly Jewish. The Germans melted tons of such totem gold and sold a good part of it to the Swiss National Bank. For many years, this photograph stood on my desk. What triggered the chain and led to me abandoning my abstinence from working with gold was when I received some wedding rings of relatives who had passed away in Switzerland. I collect wedding rings. I published these words along with my telephone number in Munich dailies 10 times in 1985. And that is how I acquired 48 ordinary wedding rings spanning a full century. I also collected the rings' stories when owners were willing to tell them. 2 examples. A ring, 8-carat, not engraved, from her first husband. Her comment: "He was a brutal dog." received an envelope with a ring and a note in it. Otto, a ring for your chain. The engraving is key M to Crete, to PV from Olympia. Two Greeks who met in New York. Also enclosed a blue bead to keep the evil eye away when you cut the band. The piece was completed in 1986 and shortly afterwards acquired by the Lehmbach Museum in Munich. And unfortunately, hardly ever on display since then. That's when pieces disappear in the cellar of a museum. Since then, I have been often asked by collectors and museums if I would make another wedding ring chain. I have always refused. A one-off is just that, a one-off. Can you measure love? 1 meter of love, 1995, sculpture, gold, 8 by 8 by 1000 millimeter. 1 centimeter of love, a 10 millimeter long segment of the same kind of hard tubing, now as a pendant. While the latter is categorized as jewelry and therefore as applied art or crafts, the former was always readily accepted as a minimalist sculpture, as art. Decide for yourself. Actually, both the short as well as the long version address the same issue, the identical content. However, we may constantly try, we cannot fathom love. Gottstichtteoquitlatl. The Aztecs called the sunny gleaming nuggets they found in rivers yellow god shit. Ilu manman, as in mammon, as in hell's god in Old Babylonian. In some old languages, stories and tales, and in the Bible, there are metaphors and linguistic images that link gold and feces. Jump cut. They learned to melt it, to cast and forge it, to make crowns, collars, rings, spangles, and chains, to connect gold with the human body, to wear golden symbols and signs of hierarchy, to state their power, to resemble the sun god. Jump cut. They made money from gold, and money is power, and the divine metal of the sun became the base, violent, bloody companion of human history. Humanity will, as has become abundantly clear, be exterminated by the worst of all drugs, by power as known as money, as known as gold. Limitless greed poisons lakes and rivers, blows up mountains, burns down forests and villages, leads to wars, and thus we constantly destroy our entire planet. Jump cut. There's gold dust under my fingernails. I'm a goldsmith. My hands know how to shape it, the gold. It is an immensely beautiful material to work with. It is only aurum, or anew for short. And physiologically, it is very pliant. It is not toxic, doesn't cause allergies. It is so kind to the body, such a gleaming beauty, so constant and willing when it comes to pliability. But gold is truly useless as regards life on Earth, bar a few special uses in medicine and electronics. Thanks gold. Thank gold tooth that you helped me through. How ironic or with the added charm of decadence, as if it were born to be deified. It is primarily suited to being a fetish. Jump cut. It is humans that are the problem. Swiss gold, die Deutsche Mark. Gold and money and greed. An ironic attempt to overcome this. A brooch in the form of a huge gold ingot, cardboard chocolate packaging, fake and feather light, and a neck piece consisting of 200 German 1-mark coins, real, solid, heavy, and noisy. A 3-hour performance in Munich in 1983. Being and semblance, reality and fiction, imagination, exposition, exhibitionism, voyeurism, vanity, illusion, and disillusion, all rolled into one. Gold and money, brutal, direct, ruptured with irony. The heart, the star, the cross, and similar symbols, signs, and emblems were inconceivable in the 1960s to 1980s as serious jewelry themes. Indeed, treated with scorn. Considered trivial, frivolous, old-fashioned, and too commercial. So there it was again, that imagine the opposite moment that fascinated me. Robert Smith with a star-crossed heart, looking like a snail oil salesman. A glorious neckpiece made of acrylic foam and spray-painted in so-called hubcap gold, 1984. A few things you naively cherish in your younger years later lose their appeal. Mickey Mouse, that notorious conformist, forever a smart aleck, who loves to make Minnie look so naive and a bit dumb. It was high time to have fun trashing a few of my childhood idols. Broken Mickey Mouse, wood carved gilt, 1982. But you can't drop those friends that quickly. 1492, when Mickey Mouse was born and America discovered, made in 1992, quote by Klaus Ottmann. This delicate egg-shaped brooch made of silicate is a metaphor for the birth of the New World, with Columbus in his search for gold, erroneously thought to be the legendary islands of Zipango, where gold was born, but was in fact the eventual birthplace of Mickey Mouse. End of quote. The big American necklace from 1986 consists of 13 palm-sized emblems, each cut from heavy high-grade steel. The words "Made in USA" engraved on the back. 5-pointed star, crescent, moon, and star, wheel of law, $sign, Liberty Bell, Star of David, heart, cross, yin and yang, anchor, swastika, tantra, hammer, and sickle. They stand for the USA's cultural, ethical, and religious diversity. That vital and fertile melting pot that, of course, is repeatedly a source of tension and contrary opinions. As with this heavy neck piece, where the emblems of Deliby rub up against each other. While sawing out the individual parts for the big American neck piece, it became obvious to me I needed to melt the superimposed signs to form a new emblem. In 1992, I made Osei, a composite of the emblems cross, Ku Klux Klan, skull, star, and Mickey Mouse in the form of a gold brooch, worn like a sheriff's badge. The nose is a small heart upside down, as I still love America. And the broken arrowhead, that Native American symbol of peace, is also part of the composition. The latter image returns in my creation of a new American banner, a large black and white pirate flag simply entitled The New Flag. It went on show for the first time on the occasion of my solo exhibition, Osei, curated by Klaus Ottmann at the Ezra and Cecil Silka Gallery, Center for the Arts, at the Wesleyan University in Middletown, Connecticut, in 1992, and later became one of the central pieces in my solo exhibitions in Munich, Lausanne, and Tokyo. The new flag is currently on show just across the street in Gallery Wittenberg. UFO, unidentified found objects, potential pendants, 1992, iron rusted. I was inspired by the rapid decline of the Soviet Union to toy with the idea that one day the United States of America might also surprisingly fall apart. And that likewise, just as many of the younger generation no longer now know what the hammer and sickle stood for once upon a time, the Star-Spangled Banner might likewise disappear from the collective memory. The stars left over from the UFO piece threaded on a gold guitar string and given a subtle title, American Blues. To prevent any misunderstandings, let me say that all these pieces relating to America were made between 1982 and 1992, and the comments I have quoted are O on O, back then, and have not been modified in light of current events. Japan, undated, molded from fragile ceramic. These dark fired objects resemble prehistoric tools or idols. These pieces can be worn as pendants and can be read as rocket shapes, as bombs, or male genitals. The toxic cult of masculinity and war, sex and violence, the classic themes of mangas, are given a shared shape in the harmless contours of Mickey Mouse, who is of course American. Although there is a definitive date for violence in Japan, Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. The title, undated, indicates that the phenomenon as such cannot be dated. After all, there are no geographical or temporal limits to violence. A small red plastic star with my face in the middle. My inquiry into stars, hearts, crosses, and the like. that had kicked off in 1982 with this ironic interpretation of the person cult in communist countries as part of an installation in Belgrade, came to its provisional end in 2002 once again in the form of a small find, this time themed on the Swiss flag. You should first keep your own house in order before poking fun at others, which is what I'm doing at the end of this chapter. Each year, on the Swiss National Day, a huge number of so-called August 1st badges get sold, and the Swiss flag is almost always part of the design. The revenue is used for good purposes, but the Swiss laundry does not wash as white as the cross on the red square of the flag. Many deals in Switzerland may be dodgy. There is corruption here too, often downplayed as keeping things in the family. My proposed badge design in 2002 features a Swiss cross made of bananas with a slight swastika spin on them. May Andy Warhol forgive me my modification of his banana. These nice little pins are small, only 16 by 16 millimeter, but pack a wicked punch. We all love to discover and explore materials that have not been used that much for jewelry before, or at least not in a very interesting and convincing way. It feels like entering untouched land. For example, sumi, Japanese block ink. You rub it in a stone dish with a little water to use it. Kyoto is the best place to buy sumi. The matte black blocks are often embellished with script characters. To become more familiar with it, I cut off the outer layer with a hand saw. Sumi is incredibly dense and tough, and exudes an incomparable scent of bittersweet resin. The sole surface gleams like graphite, like metal. Product information label. Warning: this material is sensitive to humidity. If worn in the rain, this pendant may create a big mess on your dress, which could also be read as coincidental calligraphy. Artist Mari Iwamoto wearing sumi on the street in Munich, and photographed by my daughter Miriam. Japanese charcoal, also known as binchotan, was likewise a material very rarely used for jewelry back then. The wood of the holm oak is hard and dense, fired in a kiln at about 1000 degrees Celsius, and then cooled down in ashes, soil and sand. It turns into what is called white charcoal, binchotan. Now it is harder than steel, has a high glass-like sound if tapped, and can only be cut with diamond and ground by corundum. Inside, glittering, glowing, and shining, sparkling black fireworks await you. From this particular charcoal, I made simple finger rings, hard but also a bit brittle, warm and velvety to the touch. Rings with a head, a table, a shape reminiscent of signet rings. Whenever I was in the mood, and ready to get my hands really dirty, I took a piece of charcoal and tried to expose a new ring waiting for me inside the dark realm. Just as every piece of wood is unique, each of the rings also possesses its own singular features, its individual face. You can see the tree rings and traces here left by a tree, the life of a tree. While making these rings, I forgot the world outside and all sense of time. I found peace and truth. Red dots are an art dealer's best friend, and by extension, also an artist's. I've always found that designating artworks as sold by adding a red dot, be it directly in the show or on the price list, is an arrogant sign of a change in ownership. Seen with a touch of irony, it is similar to the way dogs mark their territory on corners. I have bought it, it's mine now. And yet you're happy, wag your tail, because hey, you have got life from something. I have Frau Matzola, philosopher and a close friend, to thank for a text entitled The Cartogram of Reversals. Here is an excerpt related to the red dot. Initially, it was all about a failed exhibition concept for a gallerist in Basel, to whom Künzli proposed emptying the gallery room of all exhibits and refunctioning visitors into display surfaces by sticking a red dot on each of them. A brooch made of a drawing pin with a red head, which was to be unite the functions of jewelry and marking, and could be fastened anywhere on visitors' clothing by means of a small rubber part. The idea was to turn the empty gallery space into a machine for reversals. Visitors would stroll in as potential buyers, but come out as a purchased goods. No wonder then that the concept met with rejection. No gallerist in full command of his senses could stand by and let the fundamental market code be thus infringed. The buyer goods antinomy. End of the quote. Unsurprisingly, the gallerist who initially raved about one of the most ingenious and radical proposals for a performance, as he termed it, then cancelled it with regret a few days later. Over time and space, what started as a charming act of encroachment, I'm going to buy you, became a symbol of a bond, first of all for all artists, for gallery and museum folk, then for pros and lay persons who liked art, and finally for everyone with a sense of humor and a feel for ambivalence. A dot that you pin on yourself to show you have control over yourself. Determine your own fate. I belong to me, and you cannot buy me or own me. And the red dot is even good enough to warrant its own small display vitrine in a museum, right here in the Pinakothek der Moderne in 2013. When I was giving a guided tour of my Seoul show back then, an older, very civilized-looking gent peered down at it and said to me, You taking the piss? Auf Deutsch, verarschen Sie mich? Let me start the last part of my lecture with a well-known phrase by Hans Jost from 1933. It was commonly used during the Third Reich. Jost was a Nazi, a German cultural policymaker, poet and dramatist. Here I quote his words in the context of the ever-growing number of hate speeches and incidents of autocratic and neo-fascist propaganda on the social media, on TV, by citizens in daily life situations, as well as in global activities through new, unbearable, and unacceptable despotism by global leaders, regimes, and the repeatedly proven fact that words are followed by deeds. Cracks. Wenn ich das Wort Kultur höre, entsichere ich meinen Revolver. When I hear the word culture, I reach for my gun. Wearing jewelry is a conscious decision of the kind that only human beings make. Paradise holds the promise of immortality, eternity. The price is high, and many things will be excluded from paradise. Jewelry is one of them. Without finitude, the end, there would be no questioning, no utopias, no searching, and no finding. There would be no songs, no music, no dancing, be it with or without masks. There would be no stories to be told, no fairy tales, legends or myths to listen to, no poems to be recited. Scratched on rocks, drawn on paper, painted on canvas, there would be no symbols, images, pictures. No figures would ever be carved, coaxed from stone, cast in bronze. Never would a vessel be baked from clay, a dress woven from threads, or a tent built from skins. No philosophy, no science, no religions, no temples or pyramids or cathedrals. Architecture would not exist. Even the simplest and most ingenious of inventions, such as the wheel, the shoehorn, or Italian aglio e olio pasta, for that matter. The same applies to photography, movies, and the conversion of all data into ones and zeros. Art and everything else we consider to be culture would never have come into being. There would be neither cognition, nor belief, nor doubt, neither love nor pain, neither suffering nor joy, neither death nor jewelry would exist. As far as the eye could see, not a single little lucky charm in a world devoid of luck. There would be no time, not even for love anymore. Without the end, there could be no evolution. And without evolution, no life. And we humans would certainly not be able to exist at all. In her book Timefulness, How Thinking Like a Geologist Can Help Save the World, Masha Bjornerud puts it in a nutshell. As attractive as the notion of timelessness may be, there is a far deeper and more enigmatic beauty about an active awareness of time. It isn't easy, and yet I think this, I say this, and I write it down, namely the fact that I'm infinitely grateful to be a finite being. Without art, the outer darkness would not give way, that inner light would not be switched on. I would not want to, I would not be able to live without all those things. I just wouldn't be alive. As Leonard Cohen once sang, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. As long as I sometimes succeed in surprising myself, I will carry on looking for those tiny cracks. And then I will do my very best to let the light in and bask in it for a short while. Let me close with a quote by American Vietnamese writer Ocean Vuong. On Earth, we are briefly gorgeous. I remember those precious moments when the ink flows over a sheet of paper. And then I go to the studio, select the material and tools, and simply trust the knowledge in and of my hands, time and again. I keep searching, I keep making, I keep questioning, with passion, with humor, with love.